Have you ever felt like life is pushing back, no matter how hard you try? Like the more effort you put in, the more stuck you feel, caught in a loop where everything demands more from you, but gives less in return? It's not just burnout. It's not just tiredness. It's resistance, and it's quiet, heavy, invisible. But make no mistake, it shapes everything. Resistance isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a soft, constant no that lives in your chest, a refusal to let go, a silent push against reality. It can show up as tension, control, overthinking, or even endless planning. It's that feeling of needing life to go a certain way and feeling frustrated, even panicked when it doesn't. Resistance is the inner storm that builds when your soul is whispering, "Let go," but your mind keeps screaming, "Hold on." Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but grows in size." And when you hear that, it lands like a quiet truth you've always known but never wanted to face. The more we resist pain, the more it defines us. The more we resist change, the more it suffocates us. The more we resist life as it is, the more we feel like it's life that's resisting us. But the truth is simpler and harder. Life isn't pushing back. You are. And here's the part we rarely talk about. Resistance is rooted in fear, the fear of losing control, the fear of not being enough, the fear that if we stop resisting, we'll fall apart. But what if it's the resistance itself that's breaking you? What if all this holding on is exactly what's keeping you from the life that's trying to reach you? This isn't about giving up. It's about waking up, because beneath resistance is flow. Beneath tension is peace. And the moment you stop fighting everything, something extraordinary happens. Life begins to breathe through you again. Opportunities reappear, energy returns, clarity comes back. And you realize, maybe for the first time, that it was never life that needed to change. It was your grip on it. This is the beginning of the shift, the space between what hurts and what heals. Keep going. What if I told you resistance isn't just an emotion, it's energy, a subtle, invisible misalignment that spreads through your thoughts, your choices, your body? It's like trying to dance to music you don't like, then blaming the rhythm when you keep stepping on your own feet. Resistance is that inner friction between who you are and what you allow yourself to be. It's the silent wall you hit every time you say, "I should be further by now," or "This can't be happening." And most of all, it's the refusal to feel, to see, to surrender. This isn't just psychological, it's vibrational. Every thought you have, every emotion you repress, every truth you avoid carries a frequency. And when that frequency clashes with your soul's natural rhythm, your whole system tightens, your breath shortens, your energy dims. You call it stress or anxiety or just a rough patch, but underneath, it's resistance, fear trying to stay in control. Carl Jung spoke about the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we deny, suppress, or ignore. Resistance lives there. In the parts of you that still believe you're unworthy unless you're performing. In the versions of you that were taught to stay small, to stay safe. Resistance is the ego's last defense, a wall built out of survival, not truth. But the longer it stands, the more it keeps out the very thing you're craving, freedom. And what's most surprising? We think resistance is protecting us, that if we just keep fighting, keep pushing, we'll finally get what we want. But resistance doesn't protect, it blocks. It closes the door to synchronicity, to connection, to the effortless unfolding of life. Because while the mind obsesses over control, the soul only responds to truth. And here's the paradox. The moment you acknowledge resistance, really sit with it, see it, stop trying to escape, it begins to dissolve. Slowly, softly, it begins to lose its grip. Because resistance can't survive in presence. And the more you return to the now, the more life begins to meet you there, not with force, but with flow. This is the truth most never learn. It's not about getting ahead. It's about getting aligned. The fight isn't outside of you, it's within. And when that fight ends, everything begins. There's a kind of exhaustion that sleep can't fix, a quiet heaviness that sits behind the eyes, in the chest, in the silence between one task and the next. That's the cost of holding on. Holding on to stories that no longer serve you, to people who drain you, to expectations that were never yours to begin with. We tell ourselves we're being strong, that we just need to push through. But the truth is, resistance is bleeding you dry, not loudly, not all at once, but slowly day by day, breath by breath. Imagine trying to swim against a current that was never meant to be fought. You kick harder, you panic, you exhaust yourself. And for what? Just to stay in place. That's what resistance does. It pulls you out of alignment and convinces you that effort equals worth. That struggle is a badge of honor. But all it really does is keep you stuck fighting battles that never needed to be fought in the first place. Life begins to feel repetitive. You wake up already tense, already behind, already trying to fix something that doesn't want to be fixed. Your dreams get smaller, your joy fades. You start living in loops, repeating old patterns, attracting the same pain, telling yourself the same tired stories. This is just how it is. I have no choice. Maybe it's me. And maybe it is, but not in the way you think. Because the problem isn't who you are. It's what you keep clinging to out of fear. Fear of letting go. Fear of the unknown. Fear of what happens when you stop running. But here's the secret. Nothing new can enter a space that's already full of resistance. The love you want, the peace you crave, the clarity you're desperate for, they can't reach you if your hands are still gripped around the past. We weren't meant to live this way, tight, guarded, suffocating under the weight of what we refuse to release. And if you're tired, really tired, it's not because you're weak. It's because you've been carrying things that were never yours to hold. Let that land. Let it sting, and then let it soften you just enough to begin loosening the grip. Because what's waiting for you on the other side isn't failure, it's freedom. There's a moment, quiet and almost imperceptible, when you stop struggling and everything begins to move. Not because you pushed harder, not because you earned it, but because you finally got out of your own way. That moment is flow, and it feels like coming home to yourself. It's not loud. It doesn't come with fireworks. It arrives like a deep exhale after holding your breath for too long. Flow is not effortlessness, it's alignment. It's when your actions match your truth, when what you want no longer contradicts who you are. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, those uncanny moments when life seems to respond to your inner world with external signs. You think of someone and they call. You take a leap and the net appears. You stop chasing, and what you've been chasing finally finds you. That's not coincidence. That's coherence. Flow doesn't mean life gets easy. It means you stop resisting what is. You stop fighting the river and start trusting its direction. You listen more. You force less. And in that shift, the world starts to rearrange itself around your frequency. Not because it changed, but because you did. And here's the part most people miss. Flow isn't something you find. It's something you return to. It's your natural state. The one you left behind when you started believing that struggle was noble. That control was safety. That more effort equals more worth. But flow doesn't reward force, it responds to surrender, not giving up, letting go. When you're in flow, you feel it in your body. Your breath deepens, time stretches. You make decisions without second guessing. You meet the right people at the right time. You no longer ask, "Am I enough?" Because enoughness is woven into every moment. There's no urgency, no proving, just presence, just movement, just life, meeting you exactly where you are. So ask yourself gently, what if you stopped pushing? What if you allowed instead of chased? What if your next breakthrough wasn't at the end of more effort, but at the edge of release? Flow doesn't arrive when you're perfect. It arrives when you're real, when you're soft enough to receive and strong enough to trust. And in that trust, life flows not around you, but through you. There's a part of you you don't talk about, a part you push down, hide, silence, the version of you that's been hurt, angry, jealous, ashamed, the part that doesn't always say the right thing, the one that's tired of pretending. And that right there is where resistance hides. Not in the things you can see, but in the truths you've trained yourself not to look at. The truths you've buried under smiles, obligations, and the need to be okay. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the unseen side of the self. The thoughts you disown, the feelings you deny, the impulses that make you uncomfortable. Not because they're bad, but because you were taught to fear them, to shame them, to run. But here's the paradox. What we suppress doesn't disappear. It just waits. It festers. It shows up in disguise through anxiety, irritation, insecurity, even self-sabotage. And the longer we resist it, the louder it gets. Jung taught that the path to wholeness isn't about becoming something new. It's about reclaiming what we've exiled, integrating the parts we've disowned. Seeing our shadow not as the enemy, but as the gateway to our deepest strength. Because within every rejected part lies hidden power, creativity, passion, truth. And peace doesn't come from pretending those parts don't exist, it comes from meeting them with compassion. So ask yourself, what am I refusing to see in myself? What truth makes me flinch? What emotion do I always try to explain away? What would happen if I stopped judging that part and started listening instead? Shadow work isn't a punishment, it's liberation. It's how we stop projecting our pain onto others. It's how we break free from unconscious patterns. And yes, it's messy, but it's also where you remember who you really are. Not just the curated version, but the full, raw, radiant self. You don't have to heal everything today. You don't even have to fix it. You just have to see it. And in that seeing, resistance begins to loosen. Not because the pain disappears, but because you're no longer hiding from it. And when the hiding ends, the healing begins. Let's tell the truth. Not to the world, to ourselves. Because real transformation doesn't begin when you figure it all out. It begins when you feel it. When you stop running. When you sit down with what hurts and say, okay, I'm listening. That's emotional honesty, and it's terrifying. Because it requires you to admit what you've spent years trying to avoid, that maybe you're not okay, that maybe you're angry, that maybe you're grieving something you never gave yourself permission to mourn. We've been taught to label our emotions, good or bad, strong or weak. But the soul doesn't speak in judgment, it speaks in energy. And resistance is what happens when there's a war between what is and what we wish was true. It's the tension that builds when we smile while breaking, nod while disagreeing, say, I'm fine, when every part of us is screaming otherwise. That's not strength, that's self-abandonment. You can't align with life if you're out of alignment with your own truth. And truth isn't always poetic. Sometimes it's raw, sometimes it's ugly. But it's always the path to freedom. Because what we avoid owns us, and what we face loses its power. This isn't about wallowing, it's about witnessing, about turning toward the discomfort instead of away. Jung said that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But alignment demands presence. It asks you to stop pretending and start feeling. So pause, breathe, ask, what am I really feeling right now? Not what I want to feel, not what I think I should feel, but what's really there, underneath the noise. And whatever it is, sadness, rage, fear, confusion, don't rush to fix it. Just honor it. Because the moment you validate your truth, your vibration begins to shift. You stop operating from illusion and start responding from awareness. That's how resistance dissolves, not with force, but with honesty. This isn't weakness, it's courage. Radical acceptance is not the same as defeat. It's the doorway to power. Because when you stop resisting what you feel, you stop resisting who you are. And that's where alignment begins, not in perfection, but in truth. Control feels safe, doesn't it? It gives us the illusion that we're steering the wheel, that we know what's coming, that if we just plan enough, manage enough, worry enough, we'll be okay. But here's what no one tells you. Control is not security, it's fear in disguise. It's the nervous system trying to predict every outcome because deep down, something inside doesn't trust the flow of life. Control isn't clarity, it's tension dressed up as responsibility, and the more we cling to it, the more exhausted we become trying to micromanage the unfolding of a universe that never asked us to. Carl Jung knew this well. He spoke of individuation not as a process of becoming something new, but of uncovering what's always been there, letting the true self emerge, not be constructed. But emergence requires space, and control leaves no space for anything unexpected, anything real. It's like planting seeds and then digging them up every day to check if they've grown. The very act of control strangles the life we claim to want. Surrender isn't giving up. It's choosing to trust a deeper intelligence, one that exists within you and around you. It's not passive, it's active presence. It's a sacred pause where you say, "I've done my part, now I let go of the outcome." And in that letting go, something opens, possibility enters, flow begins. But here's the part that stings. Surrender asks you to be okay with not knowing, to stand in the mystery without trying to decode it, to release the timelines, the guarantees, the fantasy that you're in control of everything, because you're not, and that's not a threat, it's a relief. Real power isn't in managing everything, it's in trusting yourself enough to navigate what comes. The storms, the stillness, the change. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're wise enough to know that the tighter you hold, the more it slips through your fingers. Life isn't meant to be gripped, it's meant to be lived. So breathe, release the plan, trust the process, and watch what begins to rise not from force, but from freedom. Everything is energy. Every thought, every word, every emotion, vibration. We say we want peace, clarity, love, but then we vibrate at the frequency of fear, control, and scarcity. That's not alignment. That's static. And static doesn't attract, it repels. Vibrational alignment isn't about thinking positively. It's about being truthful. It's the energy you embody when you stop pretending, stop performing, and start resonating with what's real. Alignment feels like peace, like stillness in the midst of motion. It's not loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. It just is. When you're in alignment, you don't chase. You don't force. You receive. Because you're no longer trying to create from lack. You're creating from coherence. Think about the people who seem to move effortlessly through life. Things fall into place for them. Opportunities arise. Doors open. They're not hustling harder, they're aligned. They've tuned themselves to the frequency of what they desire. And because like attracts like, life mirrors that frequency back to them. On the flip side, resistance drops your vibration. It clutters your field with doubt, fear, urgency. It creates heaviness, delays, friction. You can work twice as hard, but nothing seems to land. That's not because you're broken. It's because your energy is out of sync with what you're calling in. Vibrational alignment begins with presence, with self-honesty, with the courage to say, "This is who I am. This is what I need. This is what I choose." It's not about being high vibe all the time. It's about being real, fully. Because realness resonates. Pretending doesn't. So how do you know when you're aligned? You stop forcing. You stop proving. You move with clarity. Your body feels lighter. Time slows down. You feel guided not by logic but by knowing. You make decisions from calm, not chaos. You begin to attract people, moments, and ideas that reflect who you really are, not who you're trying to be. This is the truth. Alignment is not something you find, it's something you return to. It's your natural state, beneath all the noise. And when you get still enough to hear it, when you start choosing resonance over reaction, life meets you there, not because you earned it, but because you matched it. You can't fake calm. Your body knows. Even when your words say, "I'm fine," your breath, your heart rate, your tension, they all tell a different story. Resistance isn't just in your thoughts. It's in your nervous system. It lives in the shoulders that never drop, the jaw that never unclenches, the breath that never reaches deep into the lungs. And over time, that tension becomes your baseline. You start living in a constant state of almost danger, as if something is always about to go wrong. That's fight or flight. It's the body's ancient response to threat, and the problem is when resistance becomes chronic, your system never gets the signal to relax. It keeps reacting as if your life is under attack even if the threat is just an uncomfortable conversation, a delayed plan, or a fear that things might not work out. The body doesn't know the difference between real danger and emotional resistance. It just responds. And here's what happens. Your energy drains. Fatigue creeps in. Your mind races at night. Anxiety becomes the background noise of your day. You feel burned out, not just from doing too much, but from being in a state of constant internal war. A war between how you feel and what you allow yourself to express. Between what your soul knows and what your mind resists. But the beautiful thing is this. The moment you calm the body, the mind begins to follow. Flow opens not through more thought, but through nervous system regulation, through safety, through stillness. When you begin to feel safe in your own skin, something shifts. Your breath deepens, your muscles release, your awareness expands. Suddenly, clarity returns not because you figured it out, but because your system is no longer hijacked by fear. The path back to flow isn't just mental, it's physical. You don't think your way into alignment, you relax your way into it. So if you feel stuck, ask your body, where am I holding? What am I clenching? What's the signal I'm ignoring? Your body doesn't lie, and when it feels heard, it begins to soften, and that softening is where everything begins to shift. Resistance doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. A hesitation before saying yes, a clench in your stomach when something doesn't sit right, a subtle irritation that rises without warning. These are signals, not problems, and when you begin to notice them, you start reclaiming your power. Because the truth is, most people are not controlled by outside forces. They're controlled by unconscious reactions they've never stopped to examine. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's the essence of awareness, bringing the hidden into the light, not to judge it, not to fix it, but to see it. Because what we see clearly, we no longer need to resist. It loses its power. So where does resistance live in you? Is it in your breath shallow, rushed? Is it in your posture tight shoulders, closed chest? Is it in your habits overworking, people-pleasing, scrolling through distractions? These aren't flaws, they're clues, and the more you become aware of them, the more choice you have. That's what awareness gives you. Space. Between the reaction and the response, between the trigger and the truth. This is why practices like mindfulness, journaling, and breathwork are more than self-help tools, they're portals to freedom. When you journal, you give shape to what's been circling in your mind. When you breathe deeply, you tell your body, we are safe now. When you sit in stillness, you hear what noise has been covering. Awareness isn't about control. It's about communion with yourself, with your truth, with your patterns. Try this. The next time you feel tension, pause. Don't rush to label it, just feel it. Ask, what's really happening here? What part of me is afraid? What am I trying not to feel? The answers might not come right away, but the act of asking begins to unravel the resistance. Awareness is the flashlight you shine into the shadow, not to chase it away, but to say, I see you, you're safe now. And in that moment of recognition, something opens, something softens, and what was once unconscious becomes a choice. And that choice, that pauseus where transformation lives. There are stories you carry that no longer belong to you, wounds that never got to scar, grudges that never softened, guilt that lives in your chest like a stone. And the hardest part? You think holding on to them keeps you safe, that remembering the hurt keeps you from being hurt again. But it doesn't. It keeps you stuck. Forgiveness isn't about what happened. It's about what you're still dragging behind you long after it ended. Grudges tie you to the past. Regret loops your mind in circles that never resolve. Guilt convinces you that you don't deserve to move forward. These are all forms of resistance, energetic anchors that hold your frequency down. They bind you to a moment you can't change and rob you of the moment you're in. And the longer you carry them, the heavier they become. Not just emotionally, but physically. Fatigue, tension, disconnection, they all trace back to the weight of what hasn't been released. But here's the truth, no one teaches you. Forgiveness isn't approval. It's not saying, what they did was okay. It's saying, I won't let what they did control me anymore. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's power. It's reclaiming your energy. It's choosing to return to yourself instead of being held hostage by a memory. And sometimes the person you need to forgive most is you. For not knowing better, for staying too long, for hurting someone when you were hurting too. Guilt keeps you in punishment. Forgiveness sets you free. Because you're not here to live in debt to your mistakes, you're here to grow from them. Try this. Sit in stillness and ask, what emotion am I still resisting? Who am I still holding in judgment? Don't rush the answer. Let it rise. Let it sting. Let it speak. And then, just maybe, let it go. Not because they earned it, but because you deserve peace. Forgiveness isn't a moment, it's a movement. One breath, one release, one truth at a time. And as you begin to let go, resistance begins to dissolve. What once felt stuck begins to move. And what was once a wall becomes a doorway. Not back to the past, but forward into freedom. Resistance has a time zone, and it's never the present. It lives in the past, where regret rewinds old stories and shame keeps editing the truth. Or it drags you into the future, where anxiety loops what-ifs and fear tries to predict a million outcomes. Either way, it pulls you away from the only place anything ever happens, now. The present moment is not passive, it's powerful. It's not just a spiritual idea, it's the energetic gateway to everything you want. Because flow doesn't exist in memory or fantasy, it exists in presence. In the breath you're taking right now. In the way your body feels against the chair. In the sound of silence between your thoughts. That's where life lives, and that's where resistance dies. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself. And there's no becoming without being. You can't unfold into who you truly are while your mind is caught in who you used to be or who you think you have to become. Individuation isn't about the future, it's about embodiment, living your truth here, now, fully. When you're present, you stop fighting, not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer split between 1,000 imagined realities. You begin to respond instead of react. You hear your intuition more clearly. You speak from depth, not defensiveness. Your nervous system softens, your energy clears, and life finally has space to move through you. This is why mindfulness isn't just trendy, it's transformational. Because each time you return to now, you release resistance. You stop waiting for peace and start choosing it. You stop postponing joy and start living it. So ask yourself, can I be here, fully, even if nothing changes yet? Can I be present with what is, without needing to escape it? Because that presence is power. It's the moment when you stop leaking energy to yesterday or tomorrow and start anchoring into truth. Flow isn't found in some future version of you. It's already here beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the thinking, and the moment you stop searching for it, you find it. Not because it came to you, but because you finally came home to yourself. There's a kind of action that leaves you drained, frustrated, empty if you got things done. And then there's a different kind, one that feels natural, intuitive, quietly powerful. That's the difference between forced effort and inspired action. One comes from fear, the other from alignment. Forced effort sounds like this: I have to figure this out. I can't stop now. If I don't push, nothing will happen. It's a panic beneath productivity, a desperation disguised as discipline. You might look busy, even successful, but inside everything feels tight. You're chasing, striving, forcing results because somewhere you've forgotten how to trust. But inspired action moves differently. It doesn't shout, it doesn't scramble, it rises, gently. Like a knowing in your gut, a clarity that comes not from thinking harder but from feeling aligned. And here's the thing. Inspired action often looks simple, obvious. uncomplicated, not because it's lazy but because it doesn't carry resistance. Carl Jung believed that when the unconscious is aligned with the conscious, life begins to move with you, not against you. That's what inspired Action is movement that flows from coherence, from inner clarity, from stillness. When the mind is quiet, the next step is obvious, not because it was forced, but because the noise finally faded enough to hear it. And when you move from that place, the universe responds. Doors open, support shows up, the right words come, the right people call, the next step reveals itself without demand. Not because you pushed, but because you aligned. So ask yourself, am I acting from fear or from trust, from proving or from knowing? You'll feel the difference in your body. One drains you, one fuels you. And when you stop forcing and start listening, you'll realize something powerful. You never had to fight for flow. You just had to stop blocking it. When you're in flow, life stops shouting and starts whispering. You don't have to chase answers, they arrive. Not always in words, but in signs, in nudges, in perfectly timed moments that feel too precise to be random. That's not coincidence. That's coherence. That's your life speaking to you not in noise, but in silence. You start noticing things. Someone you were just thinking about calls you. A book falls off the shelf with the message you needed. You finally restand, clarity appears where confusion lived for months. These aren't tricks of the mind. They're signs that you've softened enough for life to move through you. Synchronicity is the soul's way of confirming alignment. It's the universe nodding back when your inner world and outer world are in harmony, and when resistance fades, that harmony becomes your default. You stop waking up with a knot in your stomach. You stop bracing for life. You start breathing into it. There's ease, not because the world changed, but because you did. People appear who speak your language. Conversations feel deeper. You begin to attract what matches your vibration, not your wounds. You feel supported, even when things aren't perfect. That's flow. Not everything goes right, but nothing feels wrong. You stop living in survival mode and start moving with grace. There's clarity, not the kind that comes from figuring it all out, but the kind that arises when you don't need to anymore. When you stop needing to control everything, you start seeing the perfection in how things unfold. And peace begins to settle not as a reward, but as a natural byproduct of your alignment. If you're wondering whether you're in flow, don't look at your to-do list. Look at your nervous system. Look at your joy. Look at how much you're forcing. Flow doesn't require a map, it asks for presence. And when you're present, life becomes your guide. Every moment a breadcrumb, every nudge a whisper. This way. You don't have to make it happen. You just have to make space. Let life speak. Let it guide. Let it unfold, not from panic, but from power. Because when you're in flow, the path isn't something you chase. It's something you follow with trust, with ease, with your whole self finally aligned. You are not here to fight life. You are here to dance with it, to move with its rhythm, to listen when it whispers, to soften when it pushes, to trust when it turns unexpectedly. You are not here to control every beat, to predict every step. You are here to feel it, to flow with it, to let it breathe through you. For too long, you've been taught that life is a battle, that you must conquer it, earn it, force it into shape. But that's not the truth. That's the illusion of resistance. Carl Jung reminded us that the path to change is not out there, it begins within. He showed us that the more we deny, the more we suppress, the more chaos we create in our own lives. Inner work isn't decoration, it's direction. It's how we shift the outer world by first returning to ourselves. And now, here you are, at the edge of something softer, something wiser. You've seen how resistance shows up in the body, the breath, the choices you didn't even realize were driven by fear. You've felt how tight control can become, how exhausting it is to carry stories that no longer belong to you. But you've also seen the alternative flow, alignment, presence, truth. You've remembered that life doesn't respond to effort alone, it responds to energy. So here's your invitation. Release just one form of resistance today, one judgment, one outdated belief, One need to control, just one, not everything, not all at once. Just enough to let in a little more breath, a little more space, a little more light. And then pay attention. Watch what begins to shift, what softens, what finds you without chasing. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need a 5-year plan. You just need one moment of courage, one moment of stillness, one breath where you choose to trust instead of tense. That's where the dance begins. Let life move you. Let your soul speak. Let your nervous system rest. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are just remembering what it feels like to stop resisting and start allowing. This is not the end of something. This is the beginning of everything. Let go, lean in, and let life breathe through you. This story was intense, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.